Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for anybody who's actually staying in the auditorium, because I know we were running a little late, so I'm now competing directly with lunch, which I'm sure you're like, I could get there early and get the sandwich I prefer, but if you hold out for 15 minutes, it would be a pleasure to speak with you. So I'm here today to talk about waking up to a new reality, building a responsible future for immersive technologies. This is a report that Accenture released about a month and a half, 2 months ago in Japan for the G20. Lots of data. It's about a 35-page report, which I will tweet a link to that in case anybody in the audience is interested. These are just the highlights of the survey. But to begin with, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of extended reality, what that term is. There's a lot of jargon in this space. So we're using the term XR at Accenture and other areas in the industry to sort of describe the spectrum of virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, all these technologies that are helping to sort of enhance the way we live our daily lives. And the key thing here is that what we're seeing now, a lot of people still think this technology, and I mean, if you're here today, you probably know that it's not just sort of this potential, it's something that's actually happening around us on an everyday basis. I always say, if you pick up your mobile phone and you use the camera on your phone, whether to make a selfie or filter, that's augmented reality, and most people don't even realize that this is what we're talking about, right? So this is happening on a day-to-day basis. I think the key thing that's really interesting is we look now at where we're at in 2019. So we're at about $16 billion in spend in the XR space, and the consumer spend is pretty much on par with the industry spend. What's going to happen over the next few years is by 2023, when we hit about $160 billion in spend, you're going to see that the industry spend is 3 times consumer spend. And so, it's not just games, right? A lot of people tend to sort of dismiss XR because they think it's just the people using XR for gaming or some maybe, not serious business. And companies, and I'll get into it a little bit, are starting to use this technology day to day in their companies, and that spend is going to increase significantly. In terms of where that spend's going, there's 4 main big areas. So worker productivity. So everything from being able to prototype the way, for instance, the automotive space, building, designing in the aerospace industry, cars, planes, using virtual reality, enabling people to create larger than life-size models in VR, which in the real world, to use materials and expensive, that would be very expensive. Then when you move along the line in terms of manufacturing floors, assembly, having augmented reality glasses that a worker can sort of see the data overlay on their glasses so they have hands-free ability to do the task at hand. They don't have to refer back to a computer screen, a paper, and for critical tasks like mining, oil and gas related, it's really important to be able to have dedicated focus. In industries, for skills training, so that actually crosses over all industries, huge increase in skills training. So that's basically helping workers, whether it be through soft skills, like empathy, understanding their customers. Walmart had a huge release of VR headsets to train their customer services representatives to be able to, things like be able to help them in terms of when they're shopping and answering. Same thing with Best Buy at retail. You're also seeing with hard skills as well, mechanical skills, a lot of training being used. Marketing in retail, immersive marketing in media is another big area. We're starting to see that AR in terms of brand engagement is really taking off, the ability to try before you buy. So all of those retail apps like Amazon, IKEA, Wayfair, letting customers put merchandise, whether it be a chair, a sofa, a couch in their own space, visualize it in AR before they buy. And then last, education and health. So how students, whether it's in middle school, high school, college, reinventing the way people learn, history lessons that let people go in VR to the past, science, human anatomy, and the same thing for health. The way physicians train and operate, all moving towards this idea of using 3D, virtual overlays, augmented reality to perform these tasks smarter, more efficiently, and in a cost savings way. So these 4 areas are kind of already happening significantly. And we're seeing, if you look at this, the stats. So we did research of, this is national workforce data covering 432 occupations across 14 industries. And you see the average increase in worker productivity is 21%. It goes as high as 35% for health and social services and manufacturing at 30%. And what's really interesting is if you compare extended reality to artificial intelligence, a lot of people say, well, with artificial intelligence, there's this concern that, you know, it's going to be taking over workers, right? AI is going to replace workers. And what's exciting here is that XR, it's about enhancing workers, right? You're enhancing how they do their jobs. You're not trying to necessarily say that it's going to replace them, because you still need the human person there. So I am going to, one of the things, because I thought it was interesting, health and social services is at the top of that chart, and we actually have a demo, if you haven't tried, on the upstairs called Avenues, Accenture Virtual Reality Experience Solution. And we developed this for training for social services for foster care because we believed, our hypothesis, that this would be a more effective way to train new social care workers that are, you know, not necessarily have as much experience, and this is such an important task at hand to understand child welfare and how to go about assessing whether a child needs to be placed in foster care. So we have that experience upstairs. It's voice-based, it's VR. Highly recommend you try it, but here's a little video in case you don't have a chance.
Imagine yourself as a new caseworker, about to respond to an allegation of child abuse. You take a deep breath, and you get ready to knock on the door. You don't know what awaits you on the other side, but you know you'll have to make a decision that will have profound and lasting repercussions on the child's safety and well-being.
Seriously? Again? What was it 2 months since you people were here?
Monica.
No, I am sick of you people coming in our home thinking you can judge us.
The power of virtual reality is that you're not just having people view a screen or watch an experience. They actually feel like they're going through it. They embody and take on the role of the character. So much so that through that experience, the learning levels increase tremendously.
How did your daughter get the bruises?
I don't know. I mean, she just came home from school with,
We created a true-to-life environment with realistic characters and dialogue. We leveraged natural language processing to allow the user to choose from a variety of ways to make each inquiry and receive different levels of information based on how they phrase the question.
Accused. So you mean accusations that were never prosecuted?
It takes a long time to become a seasoned decision maker in child welfare. Years, really, of observing, inquiring, and interpreting human behavior so that you have a bank of information on which you can draw when you encounter new situations.
Because of the educational possibilities associated with virtual reality, we at Accenture thought that it would be an extraordinary way to leverage this technology. Learning in VR is the next best thing to experiencing it in real life. This is a complicated world with many gray areas. There are no right answers. When you make a decision, you make it based on the information you have, and only in hindsight will you know if the decision was right or wrong. We must do everything we can to help our frontline staff become better decision makers. Come see how Accenture is working toward this goal by using virtual reality technology to keep kids safe.
So actually, we launched that Avenues for the health and public service sector. And we're actually now building that out to a bigger platform called Voices XR, multi-industry use for soft skills training. Because we're seeing, thanks to some partners we worked with early on, that the ability of voice to get beyond just the game mechanics of some VR situations is incredibly powerful. So shifting forward, just to sort of cover off on sort of where we are as an industry, I think, big strides in movement and impact that we're already making. We believe that the next critical milestone that's going to push this industry forward is 5G. So 5G, is going to make sure that there'll be, basically zero latency. So, right now that experience is Wi-Fi connected. Sometimes there can be pauses. If we want to make it smarter, make it AI enabled so it actually responds even beyond just a script, things like 5G will be critical. The quality of experience, we're going to get to the point where content, the ability to share experiences, so co-collaboration, all of those things with training and other areas of XR, 5G is going to make possible. And if you look at the stats, by 2025, I think it is, in the US alone, half the population will have 5G. You see in other markets like South Korea and Japan, almost 75, 80%. So 5G, it's probably another buzzword people talk about a lot, but in the next few years, it's going to be a reality, and that is going to be a significant driver of XR adoption, where we're going to get to the point where now we say, oh, this seems a little wonky, it might not work perfectly every time, it's going to be seamless, you won't be able to tell digital versus the physical world. And so the thing with that is that there are risks, right? So this is all exciting, all incredible, but the point of this research report was to highlight where we are as an industry, but also to call out the risks now as we move forward, because we want to make sure that we're smart and we're planning ahead as we sort of move into this new space. So some of the risks that are important to think about is that data. So, if we think about data, we went from an era of sort of transactional data to social data, and now we're in this era of human data, where with biometrics, being able to sort of, when you get in these experiences, your emotions you can use them to be tracked. It's sensing sometimes your heartbeat or your response. Really immediate personal experiences and a lot of data that can be captured. Voice being one of those pieces of data. So making sure that we're sort of thinking about how we use that data. There's been some companies that say they won't even track the data, they'll just use it to optimize the experience at hand. The second thing is integrity of experiences. So as the worlds become more blurred and merged, things like copyright, intellectual property, there have been a lot of discussions about an AR, where you have maybe it be a museum, and somebody decides in augmented reality, an artist, to do a AR overlay of graffiti onto the museum, or it could be a school, it could be a university. Hopefully it's for artistic purposes, it could be for others. We already have a problem in the real world. We're seeing people derogatory language and signs on schools, which is horrifying, but the same thing can happen as we move to a world where there's lenses and filters everywhere, right? People maybe with glasses, you walk into a space, it can be covered in graffiti. So who owns those spaces as we move into this XR world? And who has governance over that? Cybersecurity. So as we start to rely on avatars as our likeness, like we have a social media profile, the next phase of social media profiles will be avatars. Likeness of avatars look like you. It's going to go beyond Bitmoji, right? And so those avatars, what they do in the XR space, whether they, do things that are legal or illegal, whether people steal those identities, it's another threat we need to start thinking about. And it might seem a little crazy right now, but in this future world, you will have a replica of yourself. People are already doing 3D volumetric scans of themselves. Celebrities are doing that. So it's something to start thinking about. Tech addiction. A lot of these, I've been mentioning this to friends, if you haven't seen the new season of Black Mirror, it captures all of these very well. So it's all of these, the avatar likeness, the tech addiction, second episode, but VR, immersing yourself into another world, returning to the real world. If you try VR for 5 minutes, 20 minutes, with these new the Quest device, when you enter back in, it's kind of this like, whoa, what world am I living in? And the more benefits you get out of this other world, Do you want to leave that world? So these are the things that we're going to start thinking through. Antisocial behavior. Some of these are already issues in the digital world, but they get magnified tenfold when you go into the virtual reality world. And also, digitally divided world. We have already, there's certain basic things like Wi-Fi access, right? We think but there are places that do not have that. And so even the people here in this room and myself, I'm living in that world over there, just like in a bubble of XR sometimes. And we have people who, still haven't gotten a smartphone. So how do we have a common language, a dialogue, when we're living in very different types of technology worlds, and where people on this side are horrified of what we're doing over there? So we have to have dialogue, education, talk about all these things. So as I wrap up here, I think we have to start thinking about, we are making huge momentum and drives. The industry is projected for growth, right? 160 billion by 2023. I've seen figures much larger. Enterprise is going to be driving that growth. We have to have responsibility for this, right? We have to plan, we have to think ahead. So some of the things we need to think about is, what are our early warning systems, right? We have to have a culture where we're not just pushing things under the table and hoping for the best, but asking all those questions now, thinking, what are the risks associated? How can I plan? We need to draw on a diverse experts for responsible design. So the wonderful thing about the XR space is the diversity of people that are involved, from artists, creators, scientists. There are a lot of people who are interested in exploring this new space, and we need to keep that going. We do not want a bunch of corporate executives of one sort of, mode of thinking, maybe that's money-driven, doing this themselves. It has to include educators. It has to include a lot of people coming together, and this type of environment today is the perfect place to sort of get that dialogue going. Employees. Once again, I think it's really interesting when you think about, employees are frightened by things like technology, replacing their jobs, replacing what they do. But what's really interesting about XR is it's about enhancing. I think that's the key takeaway, is that these new tools and technologies are to help you do your job better, to understand better your customer, to do it in a way that you're not going to have risks, and it's going to be safer. And this is the whole point of what these technologies are trying to achieve. Secure, inclusive, and affordable access. This is about 5G. A lot of companies like Verizon are looking to sort of make sure that they're embedding 5G early on in schools. That's going to be very important. Education, critically important. We underestimate, how, once again, going back to that digitally divide, a lot of people don't even understand. I mean, this is a lot of jargon, a lot of terms, a lot of technology. It can be very intimidating, so we can't underestimate the importance of education. Incentivize local innovation and entrepreneurs, and stimulate research and discussion. So, all of these are about getting people to be aware, getting groups, committees, organizations, whether it be through here, Games for Change, XR for Change. There's the AR/VR Association here today. There are a lot of organizations, companies like Accenture and others, that are putting forward some ideas and planning, but it also requires everybody else in this room to take a stance too and get engaged, get our government involved, get them to understand what's happening in this space, so that we make sure we don't repeat some of the mistakes that are happening right now from everything that's led up to today. So that's it, 1 minute left. So thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy lunch. Thank you.